All right. What's going on, guys? My name is Elliot with the Grateful Web, and today we are here with one of Denver's rising acts, making some noise in the scene. It is Sqwerv. How we doing today, guys?
Noise.
Well, doing well. Thank you.
So 2024 has been a huge year for you guys. Some monumental milestones. You guys seem to be kind of breaking through on a national level here recently, playing some big acts, some new cities. So let's take a walk down memory lane here. What were some of the highlights of 2024 for you guys? Some career milestones, some things that really stand out to you that took place this past year.
George Clinton.
Yeah. Opening up for P-Funk. That was
By far one of the coolest nights.
absolutely.
Yeah,
That's
that was really, really cool.
That was an honor, you know.
Yeah.
And probably the biggest venue we might have played.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and you guys have been
Most
warming up
people.
some big acts. You guys mentioned George Clinton,
Yep.
obviously the Spafford show. You guys have Pigeons playing ping pong coming up here.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you learn, like when you're around somebody like George Clinton or like these kind of, I guess, more established people who have been on the road a long time? Is there anything that you take from them that you can kind of learn, or like road lessons, things where you like watch their professionalism and you kind of incorporate that into your band?
Yeah, I think two that come to mind for me were like with George Clinton. It was really just like the environment of the music and kind of the groove and like the intensity of the funk, and I feel like they carry their own thread of music. Kind of like when you see like a big band like Fish or someone that's been doing it for a while, they kind of carry their own thing and their own message per se, and I think that was really inspiring, at least for me, to see that live and maybe feel like some of that got like passed on in a way, or hope that we can bring that to the stage, like try and evoke the same kind of feelings. But on a more like, I was just gonna say, on a more pragmatic level, like when we opened for Spafford recently, we like went over our set time by a few minutes, and they were just like, "Hey, it's fine. Just do not do that ever again."
Yeah.
We're like, I got an alarm clock that night to have on stage, but things like that are really like cut and dry things to learn.
Yeah.
It was cool how George Clinton, how loose they were. Like, the vibe was so chill. Like he has like all his family in the band, and they're like you just like, you can walk on stage, people are smoking weed on stage, not playing music, they're just on stage, like
Hanging out.
I'm pretty sure his uncle or maybe his like son or something showed up to this show like halfway through their set and he was just like smoking a weed, like he was like in like a robe or something, and just walked on stage, started singing his part. He's like, and I was talking to George Clinton's like grandson. He's like, "Yep, that's Uncle whatever." Like that's just what he does.
Yeah,
It's
just
so
loose
chill.
vibes, huh?
Yeah.
Did you guys get to talk with George at all? Did you get any like communication?
I didn't.
Yeah, not
He was just
really.
hanging out in his
We,
bus
yeah.
till I think
till-
I think somebody just came in to tell him like it's time, and then
Yeah.
he came out.
Yeah.
It was all
So
cool.
we saw
We
him
met some
walk.
of the other people in the band, obviously,
Yeah.
like Jack said, and they're just all so cool. And it's like just the family thing, kind of like how he's saying it's like a bunch of his family, or just like, I don't know, just that family community thing that I think we all look for in music or in a musical act. Like you just feel that when you see, especially a band like that, like you feel just as part of it watching it as you probably do being in it.
Totally. So in jam bands, we're all part of the jam community here, and a lot of times when I'm talking to bands, they find inspiration kind of through there's an improvised piece of music that then gets kind of developed after the fact. Like, oh, we have this segment that we really like. It came from a jam, and then they later develop that into like a song later. Do you guys ever notice, do you ever go back and listen to previous music that you've like recorded, or like pieces that you thought were cool that could use development and then turn that into a song? Or do you kind of just let the jam stay on stage and then move from there?
I feel like it's probably more like that.
Yeah.
Than it is the first. We do listen back to a lot of our shows, mostly individually. I mean, we listen back when we're on tour a lot. We'll listen to like part of like last night's show, just to listen. But as far as like the jams go on stage, there's not a ton of like, oh, that was really sweet, let's put it in the song.
Yeah.
Our album Hors d'oeuvres, however, that we came out with this year, which is another milestone, was kind of brought about on that concept entirely, kind of, because they're really short songs and they weren't on stage jams between the four of us, but a lot of it was just like ideas that had come to us over the years that we had like little phone recordings of, or just like little things that were songs but were never quite like developed. They were just kind of ideas. So I guess in that sense, that's where the Hors d'oeuvres album came from. But as far as like stuff that happens on stage, that does just kind of live and die there.
Yeah, it's funny because, I don't know, it's funny because you'll listen back, you're like, man, that was sick. Like, I love that melody that was happening or whatever. But it just stops there. Like, I usually don't even think like we should put that in a song.
Yeah.
Like, which wouldn't be a bad idea. It's just funny that how separate it feels sometimes. And you just let it be.
Certainly. Well, you mentioned hors d'oeuvres, right? And you guys obviously had two big milestones with Mirage and hors d'oeuvres. My first question is, do you struggle with spelling the word hors d'oeuvres as much as I did prepping for this interview?
I have no idea how to spell it. So.
I struggle with it.
I still do. I'd have to Google it like every time.
Dude, I've probably misspelled it 10 times.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's an awesome concept. You guys released it in 3 different parts, and I kind of want to talk about each individual part as it stands on its own, and then we can kind of bring it together, and then also take a look at Mirage and how just the different elements to it. But let's start with hors d'oeuvres. Tell me a little bit about like how does each piece stand on its own? Like what were some of the concepts individually for each piece, and then how do you feel like they kind of all fit together musically?
You mean like parts 1 through 3?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like was there like a theme? Like, okay, part 1, like for instance, is a little bit more like, I would guess like beach vibe, kind of like chill vibes, and it feels like it gets a little more psychedelic as they come on. Parts 2 and 3 have these dreamy psychedelic like features to them. Was there any thought in terms of like making them different, or kind of how did they conceptually come together?
Well, originally we actually had the order a little bit different than we ended up releasing it in.
Interesting.
I think we got a little feedback from like some of our close friends and really just ourselves of like having some time to listen to it more after it was already recorded and being like, but we should release this part first. This might be like the strongest bit in a way, or like the most the best representation of what we're trying to get across with this project. And so that's why we started with the first bit. We did chunk it out into pieces that we thought had the songs that fit together most. So we wanted to have a certain vibe for each part, but also kind of have a similar strain or theme throughout the whole thing. So they they all have like a song or two that are similar to each other while still progressing between each part. But yeah, they definitely each had their own intentional vibe behind them, and then we kind of curated that with the marketing and album art and everything. So
yeah, and it definitely feels like maybe a departure from like a traditional jam band sound. Like it dives into psychedelic rock a little bit more, floaty, dreamy, like orchestral sounds. Maybe a different move than maybe some of your previous records. Would you say that
For sure.
is accurate?
That was the idea.
Shorter songs in general, and like not hors d'oeuvres, and not not as many lyrics. And to me, like a big part of the importance of those songs is like for live, when we like, those parts in a set where maybe you just had like a couple like really long songs with like long jams, or just more intense songs, and a lot of times like the hors d'oeuvres songs can just be squeezed in as like a breath of fresh air,
Totally.
which I always kind of appreciate when I see a band. Like I don't just want to see like just 20-minute jams the whole time.
Yeah.
Like I want something more surprise, more variety, and just more breaks, for like mentally. Like I think the audience needs it just as much as the band, like And so, because a lot of those songs, I think we could, like, if we wanted to, like,
Stretch them.
But, like, we typically don't really, which I like having that aspect of that in our live show.
Totally.
So,
Maybe one day, on really special moments, like if it's really right.
yeah, never say never.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a really cool concept. I like small bits there. Well, it's hors d'oeuvres to actually just click.
Yeah, that was literally.
It makes sense. They're bite sized. Yeah.
Got it.
Makes sense. Dude, and I love Miami was awesome. Like a cool track. It gives me actually like almost like Super Mario 64 vibes. Like I don't know if you guys are familiar with Squeaky Feet, but they do like a Dry Docks like Mario jam, and it kind of gives me that like old school Nintendo feel. At least that's how I was feeling when I was listening to it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. So that was really sick. And so you have this album, this 3-part album, and now you kind of step up to Mirage, which I understand was recorded in a studio, right? So hors d'oeuvres is kind of an at-home your piece, and then you take this into a studio. And there's this thought, I think, in the jam world that it's sometimes hard to have jam bands translate in the studio. Like, how do we capture the energy of the live stage in the studio? You guys run into that at all?
Totally different beast.
Oh, yeah.
Totally different beast.
Yeah,
Tell me
tough.
about it. Like, what did you run into that was like unforeseen that maybe you didn't know about studios, or like some unforeseen hiccups that you were like, oh, we never had to deal with this before because we're in a studio?
It's hard to like think of what the big picture of it, like a song's gonna really truly sound like at the end of it.
Yeah.
In the studio. Like live, you don't quite care as much. Like it's like you play it live and that's it. And like you're gonna play more shows in the future and stuff. Like you're not going for the perfect take of a song.
Yeah.
Whereas a studio, it's like you're trying to nail everything down, and so just like thinking of what it's truly gonna be like sounding like at the end, and like, is it going to compare with other songs on Spotify and all that stuff?
I also think you mentioned like how it's tough to bring the live thing into it. I just think you don't even, in my opinion, it's just like don't even bother, you know, just like treat it like that's its own experience, the studio, you know, and like the live thing is the live thing. Like you're not going to be able to bring that in. So just once you just like kind of accept that, then you open up a whole nother level of possibilities, you know, because now you're just thinking what makes this a good studio track, you know. Like I'm not going to try to bring like the live energy of an audience in here because it's just not happening. I'm like sitting by myself playing drums to nobody, you know. Like it's not the same thing. But honestly, I personally didn't feel like a lot of hiccups came up, like other like recording it. Like it takes time, you know, but like I've recorded enough stuff in a studio now that I kind of know, like,
kind of get it.
I just like know how to like just try to get like a nice, clean, like simpler take. This is me personally, on drums, but and just get it done so that they have a lot of time to like put their thing on top of it, you know. And like the simpler, cleaner drum take, it just makes it sound so much better than if you like keep trying to do something like super crazy and it's not as clean sounding.
I think to your point, like we've done, this was our third record in a studio. So this is our third full album we've done in a studio experience. I would say if we were to go back to our first two, like Seed and Ways, we ran into, like, we debated about how the hell do we get these long improv sections into these songs, like way more, and we kind of figured out methods that work for us there. So we used what we learned there in Mirage, like. And funny enough, also Mirage is different because we actually put together our songs with like the most composition involved in them. So there really wasn't a lot of room for improv on that record. Like the Gotta Be This Way section that's normally improvised live, like a type 2 jam, we just turned into a solo. You know, we made it like an extended guitar solo that I wrote out there. Trying to think of what else in that song.
Heatwave.
Heatwave, yes.
Heatwave is the only other one with an improv section.
Yeah.
And that was, I like the way we did that actually, because that was a new one for us. We basically, the jam section, we had it a certain length of time, but we laid down a very simple drum group, like drum and bass line, and then just a compy guitar part, and then like all of the improv was we just took turns on his synth
I wasn't
one
even
night.
there.
He wasn't. Yeah,
They just
and,
used my synth.
yeah, and we were just coming up with noises, and we just recorded all this stuff, and Guy recorded a bunch of really cool guitar stuff too. And so we had all these, like, we just played it over and over, and we had all these sounds, and then we just like
Stitched it together.
Yeah, we just Frankensteined it all one
Yeah.
night. So yeah, the I feel like overall the hardest parts of recording is definitely like, okay, how are you gonna do the jam section? Because the song parts are the song parts. You pretty much, unless you need to like flush out, just like how those parts go, they're actual like parts that are set in stone. So
Yeah.
we've definitely come up with a few different tricks to do the jam sections.
Yeah. Did you find yourself getting caught up with like imperfections, or do you kind of realize?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What is that? So you.
On Mirage especially, I feel like we were very meticulous.
The whole
Yeah.
time it's basically me going like, can you go back to that drum part?
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
sound okay to you guys? Does that
Yeah.
sound okay to you
Zach
guys?
will
I
look
can't
like
tell anymore.
And I can't tell.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, can you move that
There's a
bass
lot
drum
of
just
that.
like?
Yeah.
Zach would
I
look
get
like
really
dead asleep on the couch, and then like we're working on a
Yeah.
guitar part, and he's like, "Wait, can you just rewind that for a second?" He's like, "Is that ride set
Yeah.
off? Like, did I hit the bell?"
Yeah, you're
instead of the-"
altering a snare drum that nobody will notice in the
Yeah.
grand
There was
scheme.
a
You're
lot
sitting
of
an
that.
hour.
Even to us, we're
like-
like, it sounds good to us.
But
Yeah.
it sounds really good, and I think just all of us, because we definitely have an approach. We've had an approach with these last two albums that we've done in the studio of doing pretty much all overdubs. So it starts with the drums, and then we do the bass, and then we do the guitar. So we're listening to these songs a million times, and a lot. When you're not recording your part, you're just in the room, just like listening. So we had a lot of time to listen to these songs over and over and over, and you're like, wait, this is the 70th time I've heard this song, but like that wasn't right. And a lot of times you're right, it's not right, and a lot of other times too, you've just heard it so many times that everybody's like,
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
fine, dude. Like,
Yeah.
are you crazy?
Yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting when, because we come from this jam world of like, blemishes are good, like it's something that all my favorite bands, like, I like it because you're taking risks, and if it doesn't work, that's fine, but it's for the sake of the music. And then to try to take that same concept and then put it in a studio just feels like you're kind of putting like chains on this like beautiful thing. It's like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so how do we like kind of leave that at the door? So I've always found it interesting how jam bands translate in the studio.
Yeah.
That, yeah.
Well, you have this whole opportunity now to like record this exactly how you want it.
Yeah.
Like, When the Dust Settles, for example, like we kind of like finished that song, and we were like, so this is how this song sounds when it's
Yeah.
perfect.
So
Yeah.
you finally get to hear it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
the way
it's
supposed to
it
sound.
is a whole different world and a whole different mindset that you kind of want to approach, because it is going to be there forever, and you might as well take every chance, or every chance you can to get it sound the way you want it, because
Yeah, that's just what the studio recording is, Like I said, it's just different from the live thing. Like the live thing, it's just more acceptable to mistakes are gonna happen. Like that's just what it is, especially if you're taking risks,
Yeah.
like you said. But like the studio, if you have why wouldn't you make it as perfect as possible
Yeah.
if you have the opportunity to make it that way?
100%.
And then like you said, with when the dust settles, like even not just for us, but like even just for anybody that hears those songs, like this is like when it sounds perfect, like this is the vision that they have, for that song, which is cool to hear.
Yeah. And then so you record Mirage, and then you do the album debut at Cervantes. There's this theatrical element to it, mask changes, storylines, the whole thing. Tell me about the creative process of bringing that album into Cervantes, and kind of how you guys prepared for that. What did that look like?
So I think I kind of originally had this idea in the van. We were just on tour, and when you have like hours to think when you're driving, I think it was like 8 a.m. or something. You just got a huge caffeine buzz going, just trying to like think of what we could do to make this show special and different.
It's always when you're driving. You can
It's al-
Always.
It's true.
Shower
It's
and
true.
driving.
Yeah. And
Both I do naked.
It was funny. It was actually kind of controversial. It was actually kind of controversial because the idea was there, and then like half the band was like, "Let's do it." Half the band was like,
Yeah, I was a
Yeah.
little.
Well,
music.
I was a little nervous.
My initial idea was pretty different. Like I wanted to just because it's not necessarily it's a bigger topic, but like it's not necessarily a concept album, but we discovered threads that were consistent through the music and like what story it could tell, or like what story it may tell without us knowing that it's telling, and what was the theme that tied all that music together. And so we used that as like a springboard, but initially I was like, well, let's make it like medieval themed, and I wanted to have like jousting happening in the crowd and all this crazy stuff that was just like not really feasible.
Yeah.
He's like, we can get like 10 people on stage in,
Yeah, we'll have a
in
horse
cloaks and
and
masks.
everything.
and
Yeah,
have them, like, go
exactly.
crazy
Start a
during
race.
this part.
Choreographed dancing.
Yeah, I wanted people to come out in masks and like surround the crowd during one of the song Polaris and like just start going crazy.
Yeah.
And one day, maybe we'll
Yeah.
have the ability to do this
I mean, this
stuff.
time.
But I think we had to be realistic, and we did a lot of paring down of my crazy ideas. And
Yeah, it took a lot of brainstorming for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
And like, it's like, okay, well, like, first of all, who do we know that would do this? And like, we just kind of, at the end of it, like, I kind of agreed that like the less other people we can involve in this idea, probably the better it's going to go, because
like 2 months maybe.
yeah, and
Just
and
time.
we don't, and time, and like people, like, just
We were
to
on the
do,
road too.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially because like to do something like conceptual like that, where there's like this theatrical element to the show, you really want it to like hit, because it's like risky anyway, and it's like if it's
It could be
half-assed
cheesy
and
and just-
people are like
Yeah.
confused and don't know what's
Yeah.
going on stage and stuff, it can
Be a
take
mess.
you out of like the
Right.
the scene you're trying to create.
Yeah.
So we were like,
You never want
thought
to
a
take
lot-
away from the music either.
I was gonna say.
and
Yeah.
you don't want to take away from the music too, exactly.
Yeah.
So we had like one rehearsal with our friends. There's one person that came out in the mask, and then our other friend who narrated it, Cassidy and Corey. And we had like one rehearsal, and then we had a kind of a dress rehearsal the day of the show. And I think it went about as well as it could have,
Yeah.
story wise.
If people are interested and they want to see it, it's on YouTube on
It's
our
on- oh,
on
yeah.
our
Yeah.
YouTube channel.
Cool.
So
Check it out. Yeah, it makes you appreciate like what you see Fish pull off, like the crazy shit that they pull off.
Oh, I know.
At Madison Square Garden and everything, and the amount of work that must go into something
Dude,
like that.
seriously.
And then they're planning a festival, and they've also got Sphere dates, and it's just
Yeah.
they've got to have, I don't know what goes on in the background, but they've got to just have like a crew
Well,
of people.
oh,
planning
yeah.
that
seeing
stuff.
like Roger, my first concert ever was Roger Waters when he
Yeah.
did the wall, and that's like the same thing. And that was
Yeah.
night after night they were doing that, building up the whole wall, all these other like
Yeah,
just huge theatrical things, and I just love that stuff. Like,
it's so.
It's also time to prepare it and rehearse it, because I think we've been discovering, like, we have these ideas for New Year's we want to do, but then we're also like, okay, wait, if we're looking at the calendar right now, when are we gonna rehearse this? A couple years ago that really wasn't an issue, or like even a year ago, I would
Yeah.
say, like, we didn't quite have that issue. We were able to just like 4 weeks in a row, like, let's just rehearse this. But
Yeah.
it's getting a little tougher, and like we really got to coordinate when we're gonna meet up and
Yeah,
rehearse.
I mean, you guys have been on the road like crazy recently. I mean, you did the Midwest and the East like earlier in the year, and then you did the Southwest wing, a bunch of California dates. Those were like all new cities, new places for you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We'd never been west of Colorado before.
Okay. Well, any highlights, like any venues that were sick, or like crowds that you remember that were awesome? Like, what were like a couple of your favorites?
for both tours or just the Southwest?
Just I like this year in general, like of all of them.
Yeah. I don't know if this shows the level of band we're at right now, but I think every show we had at least a couple people come out for us,
Yeah,
which, brand new
really cool,
markets.
yeah.
which is that's a great
Never
feeling.
been-
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really good. It's like, oh, sorry, I didn't want to come out and check.
And they're not
Yeah.
just like friends of ours or
Yeah.
like friends
Yeah.
of friends,
Yeah, like
you know. or,
new faces.
First two tours we did not have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So
totally.
that's a good sign for sure.
Yeah.
I
Totally.
mean, it's funny because like so in San Diego we played 2 nights at this place called Navajo Live, which is like literally in a strip mall.
Yeah.
And, like next to the Wendy's and like the King Supers and stuff.
There wasn't even like a front of the building.
No,
like
no,
you just
it
like
was like
It was
enter
around
through the
back.
side kind of thing. And but so even like the Sunday show, we played Sunday and we played Monday night.
Yeah.
And so like Monday night we show up and like literally the bartender and the owner's there, and then this guy rolls in and he's like, "You guys the band?" And we're like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I saw your ad on Facebook." I was like, "I have to come and check that out." You know,
Sick.
so like that stuff was happening, which has been definitely the best part of
Yeah.
playing all these.
Yeah.
And we had that in Arizona. We had this woman who saw us at Pho Cow, which was like this faux place.
Phoenix?
Yeah.
Pho place by night and like venue, or sorry, by day, and then like venue by night. And then she drove like an hour and a half the next day to see us at Flagstaff, which was cool.
That's
so
super cool.
yeah,
we're super
so-
grateful when things like that happen. Like even if it's like you said with Navajo Live, it's like thank God. Like just like
Yeah.
like it's like it'd be one thing if there was just like a couple people there, but the fact that like a couple he might have brought out some friends too, but
Mhm.
Yeah.
like one guy came out because he's like I have to see those guys. It like makes it feel like there's like at least 10 more people in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that energy one person can bring, where it's like, oh, cool. Now we have somebody that's expecting
What
a
we do.
show. It helps.
Yeah.
It helps playing wise to not feel like you're like playing into the void.
Totally.
You know?
Totally. Do you guys ever? So you guys have been together since 2017. A few different members, maybe throughout that time. But when you play together with people for as long as you have, there's sort of this like, what somebody's gonna do before they do it, type of thing, like that telepathic energy. I've heard Bob Weir talk about it. People who have played together forever talk about it. Do you guys ever have that sense where you can know another band member's tendency, like, okay, here we are at this point in the jam.
Yeah.
Like kind of see it before it comes, and then do you play off of that vibe at all, or
Really
you will-
hits you when you're playing with other musicians that
Yeah.
are not in this band, and they're like, "Oh, that's not Zach on drums."
Which he does.
Yeah.
He does
Yeah.
the most of too,
Right.
like by a long shot. So you probably could speak to that more than.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we've
Than us.
been going to like this week we went to a few open jams just around Denver.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's funny. We go to these open jams to play with like other musicians, and then always ends up we end up playing together.
yeah.
Jam
But,
Bush.
Jam Bush.
And it's great, and it sounds like super tight and stuff. And then like we get other musicians to come up, and like it's fun, but it's also like it makes
Yeah.
me appreciate what we have.
Yeah, that chemistry, dude. You can't, like, there's something about playing years and years together with people where you kind of know what they're going to do before they do it, and it improves your musicianship, and it elevates the level of the band, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like it just gets better all the time too.
Yeah.
Like like me and Zach link up all the time on like sometimes we'll just do the exact same fill in the middle of an improv
Yeah.
section or something like.
Yeah.
And that shit just happens, and then like I'm noticing that more and more with like these guys too, or like how I don't know, just how much better we've gotten at listening to each other, and how quick the changes are now. Like when somebody changes what they're doing, like how quickly we're able to sort of respond to that.
And learning how to like support each other too,
Right,
Like,
and not just-
because I had like I felt like I had the issue so for such a long time of like when Guy in the jam, like I just would try to like mimic a lot of what he's doing, or like honestly anybody just mimicking, but I would follow the guitar a lot in the past. But now just being like, okay, I like if somebody has like an idea, not feeling like, oh, I have to mimic it, now it's like how do I support that,
Totally.
instead of like the mimicking thing, because then once you're finding something once everybody's doing something that's supportive of everybody else, you have 4 completely different ideas that are happening, but it's all very interweaving, but it's not like just a big mishmash of stuff, you know? And then you're also, by not mimicking, like just pounding people over the head with the same idea, you know? So that's something I feel like we've all gotten better at, especially me, just like, and because like if somebody also starts an idea while you're playing something specific, like they started that idea because of what you're playing, like
That's
why
right.
why do you have to, don't change what you're doing, like
Right.
they had that great idea because of what you're already doing, just like sit in it for a while.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Sitting it for a while, there's a certain amount of patience that I think needs to be learned in improvisational music, where instead of, like you said, hitting somebody over the head, or like, here's the peak, here's the peak, here's the peak, like
Yeah.
good jam bands, in my opinion, know how to sit in the valley before the peak and really build it to that point. And it's almost like the communication before, because we can all play, most trained musicians can play at 100 and blow your face off with guitar solos, but it's that communication, like you said, and that listening and that patience to get to the high point that I think shows the community as a band, like it's the patience to get there, that is, I find so interesting.
It's funny you mentioned the peak after peak after peak thing too, because it's like we all know it's going there. You know, that's almost technically, like, in my mind, like one of the least surprising, like, exciting things. Like, obviously I love those moments, but it's like what's surprising and exciting is how you got there. You know?
100%.
Like, it's not the actual peak. So
and also
like,
being unpredictable kind of with it. Like, when I see jam bands and like the guitar player starts soloing, I'm like, all right, this could be a peak. And then 2 minutes go by, like, yep, they're peaking. Like, that's something that I kind of like, after like you see a few peaks in a row, you're like, all right, kind of like,
I get it.
Seen a few peaks in my day.
Seen a few peaks in my day. Well, and it's almost too, like, I don't know, with, not to like bash on EDM for a second, but like with that style of music, it's so here's the good part, like here's the build up, and like they have this heavy drum, and then here's the point of explosion. And it's almost like kind of more fun when it's like you don't exactly know when that's going to come, instead of the very predictable element of, like, and I love house music, don't get me wrong, but like the very predictable, like, everybody clap your hands on the count of 3, and it's just like, all right, we fucking get it.
EDM in a live setting, because I like a lot of EDM, but like live, a DJ has to be like super interesting to keep my attention for the whole show, because unless I know the music really, really well, it's build up and drop. And
it is
build up and drop,
and it's just like instant gratification over and over.
And it's fun, and it is what it is. I don't think it's any less respectable or anything, but it can definitely start to sound the same, which is so funny, because like my girlfriend's a huge bass head, and I'm like, love Subtronics, for example, I've been to several Subtronics shows, who's great, but she knows that music really well, and she's like, he's playing like 4 songs at one time. And I'm like, it sounds the same to me, and she's like, well, Fish sounds the same to me too, like it all just sounds the same. So
I was just say, people literally describe Fish that way.
Exactly. So it's funny, like I feel like it has so much to do with how well you know the music.
The devil's in the details.
Or like, again, like what you're interested in too. You know?
Totally.
Yeah. And some people just want something consistent.
Totally.
You know, I don't want to know what's coming up, but I don't think a lot of people want that. Like, I think they kind of want to know.
Some people don't want complex music. Some people want easy.
They don't want to have to work super hard for it, which is like totally fair.
Totally fair. But I think in jam bands, you certainly want to know the intricacies. And actually, one thing that you guys do, your social media presence is awesome, by the way. I think your Instagram is hilarious.
Oh, this guy right here.
That's you? Okay. Dude, the "We are not a jam band" followed by just like a punchline, I think is awesome, because for me, I've always thought the term jam band kind of like dumbs down the genre a little bit, or people
There's a connotation.
Let me rephrase that. People who are outside of the jam scene think of jam bands as like a bunch of dudes in a field, like taking LSD and kind of dancing and stuff. And like, I think it actually.
I mean, they're not too far off.
No, they're not.
Let's be honest.
But I think it downplays some of the complexities of the song structures, and just how complex and hard it is to improv with guys on stage for an hour and a half. If you guys had to rebrand jam, like, how would you describe jam music? Like,
I had this conversation with somebody the other day, because like I was on a hangout with a friend, and she was not into that kind of music, like, and I was like trying to describe it, and I realized how much of like a conundrum it is, because I'm sitting there like, well, it's like they have extended, like if you were to look at like, I don't know, maybe what Google would say or what like Spotify would say or something, you'd be like, all right, there's like extended instrumental sections and there's like improvisation. But to me, it's like, maybe just because I'm like in the scene, in my opinion, like a lot of bands that get lumped into jam bands aren't necessarily jamming, but they're like jam adjacent, or because they do have like long guitar solos or like excellent musicianship, they get put in the category.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's more like bands that really have sections where it's complete, like it can go anywhere. It's not just it's not a solo over a form that the band builds up, and that can sound great, like somebody just takes a 32 bar solo or a solo without end, but the band's not going to like change keys under them or change feels or change genres even in the song. Like that to me is more like, okay, these guys are jamming, and so I'll call them like a jam band. Whereas, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, but like maybe like Dave Matthews Band, for example. Like I don't know how quote type 2 they really ever go. I've seen some shows and it's great, I love them, but they get called a jam band. Or like Tedeschi Trucks, like they get in the jam band scene, but it's like they're not doing that same thing. So
like collective.
What's the definition?
Engebretson is a jam band.
They like, are you saying
as another example?
As
He's
another
saying
example.
of like
but they don't. I feel like he'll admit, like
He will,
he'll even
he's
say
like, I don't know how we got into this. Like, I think it's just the festival circuit.
It is. I think it's partially festival, and I think people just automatically assume improv equals jam band.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is the case. Like, just because you have a dedicated section to a song structure that isn't necessarily planned, they're like, oh, you're a jam band. And I think it's deeper than that. Like, I look at like King Giz kind of gets lumped into the jam world now, for better or for worse, right? And they don't really have any jam band I'm a giant King Giz fan, but they, outside of the fact that now live they are improving more, like they're pretty far from like a Fish or a Mo, you know? But they kind of get lumped into this category.
Yeah,
I think
part of that too. Sorry, I'm just gonna say about King Giz is they're so eccentric.
So
like they are so fringy musically, that they play a lot of songs into their songs, even though they're not like like type 2 improvising and stuff. They attract a similar mind, I think.
Yeah.
Which is probably why they're associated. But I think
anything can happen with their music, like it's not because of improv, but it's just the range that they cover, which is kind of like what you were saying. It's just like, I feel like it's a band with the jam band thing. It's like improvisation that can go anywhere, like that to me, like I thought he kind of nailed it with that.
Totally.
Which I will say, like, made me think back to your earlier question about chemistry and playing with other musicians. And like, if we are playing, when I'm playing music with these guys, like, even if we just like, we're back at home after a show and we were jamming in our living, like, a bunch of people were here or whatever, just hanging out, and we were jamming with them. I know when I'm playing with them, it can go anywhere, like at any time. Like when we play a blues tune, like we have in a jam, like all of a sudden we could just hold the root and it could change key and go from there and change into an entirely different thing. When I'm playing with other musicians, that's not like on the table yet, I think, maybe. Totally. Or like,
very rarely.
They're, like,
kind of have to earn that, or like,
it'd be kind
of honor. Exactly.
Or just be able to trust the person, or trust everybody else, and like that they're not gonna like freak out if like if you do something,
getting
or
off rhythm and weird songs.
When we went to the Herb Jam on Wednesday, like we got pretty far out there, and like it's a funk jam, and I was like, I hope they like this. We are just on the route right now.
What do you guys think of when you're jamming? Like, what's going through your mind?
Hopefully nothing.
Hopefully that's a good answer.
Or this sucks. Oh, why doesn't anything sound right? It's either that or nothing, and just bliss awesome.
Which I think is probably the right thing, because I think if you're overthinking, then it's probably going to affect the music.
You're not listening
incredible.
as much, probably.
Yeah, you're probably not listening.
Which is the most important thing.
Yeah, I've always found that interesting. I was like, what are they thinking about?
Well, and it's incredible how like you're like like I'll sink into a really sick bass line and I'm like, oh, this is sick. And the minute I literally have that thought, this is sick, I forget how to do it. And
She
then
gone.
She gone, just like that,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting mindset to be in. That flow state is just
That's what it's about.
that's
Yeah.
what it's about, and it's ever elusive, and it's that thing that where it's like you can't consciously be in it because then you're not it like it. You just have to.
It's crazy when you're real deep in it, and like and then everything's just going like so well, and then if it's like sometimes I'm like I don't even know like how I'm doing this right now,
Yeah.
or like it like, which is a
Just
thought I'm
watching your
having,
fingers
like,
on
but
it.
it's like
Yeah.
it's just happening, you know. It's like I'm not even. It almost feels like I'm just watching myself do it, you know, which is just the weirdest
My dad.
feeling. But it's like that happens when you're like I said, when you just get real deep into that state of mind, and you almost feel like you couldn't pull yourself out of it if you could,
Yeah.
which is like that's the dream.
That's what we chase.
Yeah.
You know?
My dad used to say he could almost like when like the Grateful Dead would kind of get into like that zone, like he could almost like just hear the next note Jerry was gonna play. Like it was just like everyone's
I-
just like on.
that's
On the
interesting.
same page,
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of what happens when we all like sink into the slipstream. I've heard it referred to as, and then like we all kind of just know exactly where it's going somehow, or like at least the direction we're headed. you know?
Yeah, it's got to be a very freeing feeling, or a very like creatively empowering feeling.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Well, and then when all four of us are in that at the same time, it's like, and I'm playing because like I feel like one of the hardest things for like a musician that does a lot of improv is like I don't know, for me it's always like playing like too many notes, and it's like focusing too much on your part and not like it's just a constant battle of like how to best support the song and the sounds that's being
Focusing
created,
too
but-
hard on your part and not your role.
yeah, so there's like I know it's good when like when I'm playing something and I'm like, you wouldn't even think of playing something else right now. Like this sounds so good. Don't like I'm like in my little conscious.
do it.
Don't do it. Don't
Don't
try
do
to
it.
do
Oh,
it.
yeah, that's the
Don't do
hardest
that,
thing,
Phil.
man.
Yeah, you're just like this.
It's like the devil on your shoulder.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do it.
yeah, exactly.
Play that note.
Yeah. And then you're like, and you're like, oh, that sounded like shit.
Yeah.
Fucking just go right back.
Yeah, that's
And that's why I figured I shouldn't do that.
Yeah. And then you're like, what was I playing?
Yeah.
And then,
and then it's gone.
and then
it's
sometimes you
gone.
feel the whole band.
Oh,
band
yeah, that's the
it's
worst.
like one note, like when you're really vibing, and then like you just one outside.
Thing.
Yeah, and that's like something that like only the four of us would feel, but like,
Yeah.
it's like ooh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
looking at you to make
yeah,
sure
it's-
you know.
It's like you
it's all three heads.
Yeah.
when a new idea comes up, you don't want to be thinking, okay, I don't know, not all the time, I guess, but a lot of times I feel like I don't want to be thinking like, all right, now I'm gonna put this idea in. Like, whenever a new idea comes up and it sounds awesome, it's always just happened. Like,
Yeah.
it's almost like an accident or something, and I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm gonna save it. You know, sometimes that happens,
Totally.
and it's
Yeah.
not bad, but like a lot of times when I have an idea and I'm just like, all right, do it now, and then it's just like it wasn't natural for some reason.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Yeah, I love that. To wrap up on Mirage, and then I've got a few more general questions for you, but Polaris, what a banger. What a banger.
Yes.
Any thoughts? That's heavy, dude.
It's-
That's like
yeah.
heavier than, would you say, anything else you've ever released?
For sure.
Yeah.
We wrote that the same time I wrote. It came out similar time as Heat Wave.
Yeah.
As far as when those songs were written. I don't know. Guy's the one that kind of came up with the guitar melodies.
Yeah.
Felt like Late Special might have had an influence on that or something.
Yeah,
I
I
felt like we
think
had.
For me,
we had-
is.
a
Yes?
little bit
Okay.
too.
It felt,
for sure.
it has Infest the Rat's Nest like vibes to it.
Nice. I don't actually know that song off the
Okay.
top of my head, but maybe I've heard
That
it.
album.
It's like one of their more metally like albums. It's like thrashy kind of. It
Oh,
has
nice.
that like I don't know, almost like a punk beat or like a fast speed metal beat to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think I wrote that song when I was listening to some more stuff like that, and just had that. Actually, no, I'm remembering. I wrote that riff, and it was initially going to be on Hors d'oeuvres, and I wanted that to just be like an hors d'oeuvre type song, but then we flushed it out, and we were like, we should put melody over this, and we were like, well, there's enough lyrics on it or there's not so many lyrics on it that it may fit on hors d'oeuvres, but then I think we realized vibe-wise it would not have fit really well at the time, so yeah, it actually started like that.
That's funny. You're so right. And now it's like, it's like literally that song is like the antithesis of like hors d'oeuvres. And you know what's funny too is like on our Spotify Wrapped thing, our like 2 like top songs were Miami and Polaris.
Love that.
Which are contrasting.
Totally contrasting.
Like I said, Miami is like floating space.
80s cop.
You guys described it as an album you would put on after a show.
Yeah.
Which I really like because I have specific music. Like when I leave a show, there's a certain vibe and it has to like fit that. And I think that's an awesome way to describe hors d'oeuvres. But you're right. Like Miami and Polaris are very contradictory to each other, or would not necessarily fit next to each other.
Yeah. Polaris is a good example too. Like I'm just thinking about like improvising together and like going with the flow. One of the reasons like I love this band is we're very open to just any sort of thing, you know, and I think we actually like strive to do so many different sounding songs, you know. So like Polaris came along and everybody was sick, like let's dive in the metal world a little bit, you know. And so it's
it's mosh, like we
like
so many different kinds of music, so it's like I feel like at that point I probably like had went to like UMS in Denver, or seen a lot of like the Denver scene is a lot of great bands that play stuff like that, you know, or just like heavier psych indie rock type stuff. I'm like, well, we should do stuff like that too, you know, or I'd like to. At least so.
And you're seeing kind of a rise in like the especially coming out of Australia, and like what the psych world is doing right now is kind of on like, you look at like King Giz is the big one, but there's psychedelic porn crumpets and A Mill and the Sniffers, and like there's this boom of like,
I want to know what's going on in Australia.
Dude,
like what's happening out there? All these
what
great
is
bands
going
are
on?
coming
Like
out of.
these insane bands coming out of Australia right now.
I really don't know.
And but Denver, I mean, God bless Denver because we have such a great music scene. But like they caught on right away, you know. Like you look, A Mill and the Sniffers is like selling out the Mission Ballroom now, and it's like
or like Arc de Soleil, like stuff when you get into like the milder psych realm, maybe, like more soothing psych rather than the heavy stuff.
Mild Life and stuff like that.
Carbon, obviously.
Yeah.
Glass Beams, like
all that.
I love Denver too because you're right. We catch on so fast, and it's like if you see an artist that is coming up and they're at Sqwerv's or they're at like the Bluebird or something, you know, that's like your one chance to see them in a small venue, because you're like, next year it's going to be Mission Ballroom or it's going to be Fillmore or something like that. So it's like, I feel like we're really on top of a lot of I love this music scene here, man.
So it really is. It's unbelievable.
It's right up my alley.
I agree. A couple more for you guys, and then we'll wrap it up here. But this has been awesome. I sometimes hate to ask bands like what your influences are, because I think it's just such a cliche question. So I will wrap it up and disguise it in a different way. If you were to build a playlist full of artists that inspired you growing up until this point, who would be on that playlist?
Want to each say a few or something? Yeah, just start naming them.
Yeah, start riffing. Yeah. What do you like?
Name
what kind of music
the
do you
band's
like, man?
influences, Zach.
Well,
Yes,
you know,
do.
Fish.
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
That's
I
about
love
it.
it. I love Animals as Leaders. Animals as Leaders was huge for me. Between the Buried and Me is sick. I love Chick Corea. 9 Inch Nails.
7-inch screws.
7-inch Screws. Michelle Camilo. I love a lot of Latin jazz too, like salsa music. Franz Liszt, of course. Shout out to Franz.
Zach's been
You're on volume 3 right now?
That'll be next. I finished volume 2 of his biography, but I don't know. It's so much. I just like, those are the first ones that came to mind.
For me, Beatles,
Bob Marley, Pink Floyd, The Doors, Led Zeppelin, a lot of like the pop or bigger artists, or like popular bigger artists from way back when. And yeah, those are like the big ones that come to mind. Then like Tame Impala, Mac DeMarco. I don't know. I probably am the most that delves into like indie singer songwriter stuff. So there's a lot of singers like Leonard Cohen or Josh Ritter, people like that, Bob Dylan. And then yeah, recently, I didn't get into the jam stuff until I was like 21 or 22. I didn't even know who Phish or Grateful Dead were until that point. But they're definitely some of the bigger ones for me now. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, I would say if I were to look at like my piano influences, like who I look up to, I love like New Orleans style piano. So like Fats Domino and Dr. John, I love their piano styles, and I've watched a lot of Dr. John and learned like a lot of how he plays in Professor Longhair.
Yeah.
The first pianist I ever loved was probably Elton John as a kid, and learning Tiny Dancer and Rocket Man. And then when I got into jazz in college, my favorite is Oscar Peterson.
Okay.
Yeah, I could watch his videos all day.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to like think or like separate, like it's hard to separate bands and like music that has had a direct influence on like literally your playing, and because it feels like you try to take something from like everything you listen to, So I don't know, I guess like I was a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. Love Jimi Hendrix. Went through a huge Nirvana phase and Red Hot Chili Peppers, and obviously Phish, when like that really caught on and sank in for me. Like that band is incredibly inspiring. So are the Beatles. Like Paul McCartney is one of my favorite bass players, but I feel like I like him more for his just songwriting ability. Khruangbin, huge influence. J.J. Cale, Papa Rod. He's really, dude, I love this guy.
Yeah.
He's kind of a newer guy, but
Love it.
Yeah,
you guys have it's a lot of different backgrounds coming together.
It's very different, and it's cool. I always like picture it like a four-way Venn diagram, because I feel like we're
it's like School of Rock.
Because we also both like can't like I was in a metal band in high school, so that was a huge like Metallica and Black Sabbath, and like Pantera and Slayer. Like that was a huge part of my life for a long time.
Totally.
And that music has just like aged like fine wine. Whenever I listen to it, I'm like, this still kicks ass. But like we sort of circle with the metal thing, and then I guess I'm just thinking about like me and Guy are definitely like hugely into like Doors and like 60s and 70s
British
like,
invasion stuff,
and then the Grateful Dead. Like we have a very circular like lots of different influences, but they overlap.
Totally.
I want to add Cypress Hill too.
Shout out to Cypress Hill.
Yeah, Mac Miller
and Zappa.
Zappa. Hell yeah.
Indian classical music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peruvian flute bands.
Yes.
How do you guys find inspiration outside of music? What do you do? Hobbies, experiences, things? What else outside of the music realm gives you inspiration, or just maybe it's not even inspiration for music, but things you enjoy that are outside of what we're doing here?
I like stand-up comedy a lot.
Hell yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it influences me in some way just because I get so deep into it. Just as like an art form. Just seeing how other people are just as dedicated to something that's so, I don't know, far out sometimes or just weird. And then, honestly, I always... anybody that I see who like just works so hard at something they care so much about, like even people who just like invent things, like it's just like a really beautiful thing to me. Like even simple items, like somebody cared enough like about like to make the toaster, but it was like their life, they were inventing, like they just cared so much about putting something into the world that would help other people in some way, like that. That's always inspiring to me, like even just on that minuscule level.
Yeah.
Like there's something beautiful about that.
Yeah, totally. yeah, that drive to want to, I mean, it's the same with musicians, right? It's just like you have this burning thing inside you, and if it's,
Yeah. And you want to share it because you
Yeah.
know somebody else needs it.
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
I
Because
like
you needed it at one point.
yeah.
Right. That's how I feel, at least.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
sports. Yes.
Sports.
Sports ball.
Sports.
We like sports.
That's a good
Yeah.
example.
I play
Jack
basketball.
probably the most,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a giant.
Fish is a sport.
Fishing, you're right.
is
Big one.
Yeah.
you know that is a fine line. It's not really. It is.
Huh.
It is a fine line, just like we use in fishing. I love fishing. I like fly fishing, so
Yeah.
I do that when I'm not doing this and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think I like any art form though too. Like
Yeah.
you guys are similar in that.
For
Like
sure.
painting, like yeah, I love painting and visual art and just any I don't know, poetry or anything, man, that anybody's creating. I think is pretty cool.
I think for any creative person, this like that question is super important because it can just get so stale when you're trying so hard at one thing for too long, especially when it's something creative. Like you need to take inspiration from different aspects of life to make your creative process like a bit better and to have like real emotion and like feelings behind it, because if everything you do is this one thing, then there's nothing to draw from there. So I think it's super important as an artist to always like take the time for yourself to like step back and like remember things that you enjoy outside of this thing that you're working like so hard at. And I know that like we have had times where like we are working just on maybe on a specific song, or we've just had like a really rigorous practice routine or something, and then somebody goes out of town for a week, or there's just like we just can't practice as much as we do for a month or something, and then we come back and we're like, wow, this feels like so much better, just that break of
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, you need something. You need to turn your brain off. You need something. If you work so hard at something, you need to have something that turns the brain off and like recharges the battery.
Yeah.
For sure.
You need to chill for a second.
Totally.
But sometimes it's hard. Like you feel like, I feel really guilty
Yeah.
if I go one day without like playing. Like I just feel really bad. But
Yeah.
it's really necessary though to have, like, there's times where I've done it, and like the next day I do play, I'm like, man, like I just feel like I'm playing so much better.
Yeah.
It just like clears up a lot of the, I feel like you're like digging yourself into a hole sometimes when you're doing something for so long, and then for some reason taking a break like gets you out of it.
Totally.
And then you can do something that you wouldn't have thought of if you didn't take a break.
Yeah, it's kind of like work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
There's there's some times where like things just like aren't clicking for whatever reason, and you just don't even want to practice it anymore. And like that's not like your improvement is going to be marginal if you're working at something that you don't really want to work at, but you should work at. Just like keep. But this goes into a much longer conversation because, like you said, like it is still necessary sometimes, and yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. Awesome. This has been awesome, guys. You guys are great. I could go forever. I don't want to pick your brains about jams, but I'll wrap up with a few for you guys. Well, this is kind of cool. You guys were on Fish on Film, the Instagram reel, the Charlie Crockett album. That was kind of that was kind of cool. That's really cool. I feel like that reaches new audience. You guys have been, at least in my opinion, kind of breaking through. I've seen your name more. It seems like it's kind of breaking through to new audiences, but I guess how did that come together? What was that like? And that obviously puts new eyes on you guys, right? Like that's a pretty big channel to get your name out there.
Yeah. I can just take it because I fielded it, but basically they just reached out to us on Instagram. I don't know how they heard of us, but
Yeah. Maybe the after party, Dick's after party.
Possibly. I mean, we've definitely done a lot of fish adjacent things. The after parties are playing on Deer Lot, at Deer Creek and at Dick's and stuff like that. Could have been some of the reels that we've made. I don't really know, but
I think I could be wrong, but I think who runs the page may be in a band themselves. Like that,
Okay.
If I've seen the page correctly, and like they may just be aware of the bands that are like at our age doing this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked initially for us to do like, I guess we're still waiting on it, but we're gonna be in one of their, and maybe I don't think this is spoiling anything, but we'll be in one of their magazines, one of their prints, because they sent us a camera to shoot some photos for film.
Kodak.
Yeah, like a Kodak, and then
That's
we
sick.
send it back, and
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what their magazine is called, right? It's like Film VH.
I think it's like the Fish on Film like issue. Like that's
Yeah.
It's a magazine. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the
magazine.
print itself is called. I think it's called Film.
Film.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
I'm
so.
I'm really not so in the know about it, to be
Yeah,
completely honest. so.
they put out great content. It was awesome to see you guys on there.
That was really cool that they
Yeah.
feel us about, and it was funny with that Charlie Crockett thing because like the favorite album post right before that was like Billy Strings.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Here's Billy Strings' favorite album, and here's Sqwerv's favorite."
Yeah,
album.
yeah.
Like, that's cool.
Good company, man.
Yeah.
Really? Billy Strings was before this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and then
didn't
Fish
know
on
that.
Film was cool. They were like, it was really cool that Billy took time to send us a message of what he thought was his favorite. But I thought that was just cool.
And it was like Cotter Ellis from Goose was the next.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good company.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The internet's a
Shout
crazy
out.
thing.
Shout out
It
to
really
those
is.
guys.
You guys utilize it well, though. I mean that. Like your
Thanks.
social media presence is on point.
Yeah, we can thank Guy for that for sure.
Yeah.
And it sucks that
One
it's
day
so
I'll have
important.
to, but
Yeah.
I don't know what my long term role in it will be, because my goal one day is to never have to be on it
I
again.
know. It is a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah, because I'm also like, I don't know, man. It's like, if I do not do stuff for us like that, I'm like, am I just gonna be constantly plagued by the idea that I have to keep it up in my head, or
Yeah.
like, hopefully they're doing the right stuff, like, because all any of us want is to be able to like play shows and have
Mhm.
fans come out and we play music with people and for people. You know, it's like, don't care about that stuff, but like I realize the value of it, and
Mhm.
it does make me laugh sometimes. Hopefully I can make people laugh on there, or like, you know, have some good content. But I don't know, one day hopefully I won't have to, and then I can just trust that a person is, you know,
Yeah.
I don't
You've
know.
built an audience enough to where like
Yeah.
you have a loyal. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think any of us want to be like content creators. but,
Totally.
like, we are. I mean, what are we doing?
Only
right
of
now?
music.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like
totally.
in this moment, like it's
In the-
valuable, and people want to know stuff about you, and you know.
And it's the like it's really the only way I can think like where it's like that direct line to your audience.
Mhm.
If you
Yeah.
can tickle the algorithm right, and you know,
Yeah.
and they can
It's gross.
you know, it's really just up to them to put it. Yeah, exactly. You just gotta tickle the algorithm because you can post stuff, and if it's not, if they don't show it to anybody, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't
So
matter.
It's
Yeah.
a tricky, weird thing.
So
But it
weird.
is a blessing in disguise too, because I don't know. I could go on for so
Yeah.
long about
I mean,
all
it's
this
a
stuff we're
necessary
talking
evil,
about.
right? It
Yeah,
is.
it is.
It is.
It is, and part of it's not evil too. Like it's but it's just goes it goes both ways. It's a big yin and yang thing. Social media.
Totally.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap it up with this. This has been awesome, guys. I appreciate you
Thank
taking
you,
some
man.
time
Really.
to sit down with me today. The New Year's shows are coming up. Lost Lake 2025 is right around the corner.
Yes, sir.
We'll leave it with this. What can fans expect for 2025 and beyond? What do we got planned? The pajama theme for the New Year's show.
Yep.
So I guess quick breakdown of the New Year's show, and then what are we thinking for 2025 in terms of Sqwerv and what the future holds?
I can take logistical things, and then you guys want to talk about what you expect.
You
from
take
the band?
the logistics.
the
I'll take
logistics.
the statistics.
Well, yeah, we got the Lost Lake shows. We're gonna announce our theme for night 2 here soon. That'll probably already be out by the time people are listening to this. But yeah, we'll be doing the 2 nights at Lost Lake for New Year's, and then we're playing at our first time at 10 Mile Music Hall with the Runaway Grooms, who are an awesome band if you're familiar with them. And then after that, we've got a lot of weekend runs planned in 2025, so we're gonna be going down to the Southwest, doing Arizona and New Mexico, and then we're gonna hopefully be making our way to Texas for the first time in February, and then in March we're gonna be going to Nebraska and Kansas, hopefully, and a big spring tour hopefully up out to the East Coast and maybe a little bit of the Southeast. And before that, we'll be doing opening up for Pigeons playing ping pong in Boulder at the Boulder Theater, and we're working on a big Denver show in the new year already, because that's how things you got to plan things out now, like 5 and 6 months in advance, which is kind of wild for us. But yeah, that's what we got.
Awesome.
But to the fun stuff. What
Lots
can they
of
really
jams.
expect?
Lots of jams. 6 soaring peaks. Melty sounds. We are recording some songs here again, though. So
Okay, so
more
maybe a
recorded
new-
music.
Some more recorded music on the way.
Yeah, so this we're kind of in the middle of writing and recording. Like, we're writing brand new songs, and then we're also trying to record an album here with more of a legit studio approach. Like, Hors d'oeuvres was very off the cuff. Like, we wanted it to have kind of a lower fi sound, raw-ish. So,
Like we all played in this room and just
and it was mostly live takes.
yeah, live-
Mostly live takes, like very little overdubs. But so
Yeah.
now we're trying to record an album similarly to the way we did Mirage, but here. So that's been a fun process trying to figure out. And then we're writing a bunch of songs that we've been meaning to write for a long time, and songs that guys had in the back pocket. I also want to say too that our New Year's is First Nights with Splendid Blend. Who have you heard of them?
I know of them. I have not seen them live yet.
They're great.
I've
they're
heard
like one of my
Jamtronica,
favorite.
right?
Yep, yeah, dancey, trancy funness. They're really good at it, and Dandu as well. So
Very
They're
cool.
kind of like a fusion trio. Sean Dandu is the bass player, who's really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, playing with those guys will be a lot of fun. But yeah, hopefully new music. Definitely, hopefully a new album. I mean, if we could put out two new albums next year, that would be awesome. I get more and more excited to record music the longer I stay in this band, because we have a pretty good collection out now, and we have so many songs. Like, it's not like songwriting. At least I've been in bands where songwriting was kind of like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
But we definitely have a wealth of ideas to sort of work with, so it's really fun and exciting.
Yeah. Final question. How many? You just sparked an idea. How many songs? Like, if you had to play a festival of 7 days long festival, how long is the song catalog right now?
Of originals, what is it, 60 or so? Or
I think it's
50
40 or 50 original
Yeah.
I think
songs.
once we get these new songs, then it's gonna be in the 60s for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have 15 up on that board that we're trying to learn right now.
Awesome.
And then we have probably that same amount, if not a little bit more, of covers that we
Yeah.
can play. We have a long list of covers that we don't play all the time, but if we needed to, we could brush up on them and play. It wouldn't be like learning a brand new song. So pretty dense catalog, which is pretty awesome. And
Yeah.
it's fun. Trying to keep all those songs in
Right.
rotation.
What stays relevant? What
Yeah.
gets shelved?
Yeah.
All that
Yeah,
stuff.
New
If-
Year's, we're trying to do
Possibly a whole set of new music, is maybe one of the goals.
Yeah.
We'll see how that unfolds, but just in general, this is our first time where we're gonna have 2 sets at a headlining show, let
4
alone
sets.
2. Well, we haven't had one with 2 sets in general, so
Right.
Yeah.
first show with 2 sets, then we get to do that for 2 nights.
That's
which is
awesome.
really exciting,
Gives you a
'cause-
lot of
Yeah.
room.
We always are chopping our sets and our jams at a lot of our shows, just because we want to play more songs, and we only have an hour and 15 minutes, compared to what we sometimes have at our 4-hour gigs, where we're we can really relax into these.
Totally. Right on, guys.
What are you doing in the new year, Jack?
Yeah.
What's coming up in your new year?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be at Lost Lake.
Community.
Hey.
I'm going to
Community.
Disneyland.
Hey. Well, right on, guys. This has been awesome. I appreciate you guys taking some time. Sit down with us. Go check out Sqwerv. Go to the New Year's show. Check them in your town 2025. And appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Cheers.
Fun.
Appreciate it. Boom.
Hell yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. Oh, hold on.